I appreciate everybody that's made it out. I know Michael and Terry out of town, and looks like we're missing, looks like Darren and maybe one or two others. But I appreciate everybody that's decided to come out tonight. Really cold night, but a good night to study more about encouraging one another. Before we get going, Brad, would you care to lead some opening prayer?
Heavenly Father, we come before you now, so grateful for this moment we have to assemble together with Black Christians, like-minded Christians, to study your word, and with all the teachers tonight as they are leading these studies, and pray we're all edified, we're all edified by these advice that we have here on tonight, and these are thoughts. And we'll be engaged and forget the cares of the world and be active in participation in this. There's so many people who are traveling, Heavenly Father. We pray that you be with them, those who are in sickness. We ask you to please take this virus away from us, so we can get back to normal things. Be with the Bridgman family as they are traveling and they are laying to rest. Jason's mom, be with them in the coming days. And help us look for ways to encourage them where we can. If you reach way of favor, Lord Christ, and we pray.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, in your books, we're still on page 18. Page 18. We had left off right there at Acts 15. We were just finishing up with talking about Mark, who we all think is either the cousin or the nephew, potentially, of who? Of Barnabas. Depending on which translation you're looking at, I want to say the King James says nephew, and a lot of them say cousin. A lot when I doing a little after class the next day, I started looking a little bit further into it, and a lot of the commentaries think based on the Greek it might be cousin. It's a hard translation because of the way it's written. The way the word cousin is used back in the Greek text there is not normally written that way. But one of the words used, and I did not write that down. But it's not hard to find if you go search on the internet, it pulls it right up. One of the words used is only associated normally with cousin. So a lot of them think it is actually cousin to nephews. But they say either way it would fit. The time frame, timeline, whether it was both dads or brothers, or if it was or if it was a relation that caused him to be his nephew. Either one fit. So either way. The point of that last time we were talking about, it did not take away from the fact that Barnabas was acting as what? Acting as a encourager for who? For John Mark. It did not matter if it was his cousin, did not matter if a friend, didn't matter if it was somebody who barely knew. Just as he did with Paul, who by all accounts we see no indication that they're related, may have an indication that they may have known each other growing up, or at least were in the same area possibly growing up. But Paul was obviously, we talked about earlier, Paul was a man of who completely, we always talk about complete 180 from our sins, complete turning. I mean, Paul's the epitome of opposite direction. You go from killing Christians to being one of them. We talked about before, the apostles did not want to give Paul the benefit of the doubt. They did not want to be someone who wanted to allow him to come in, and because Barnabas did that, it led to some wonderful things. One of the things was which church got established that may have never happened if it didn't happen if it wasn't for Barnabas. Antioch. Remember. Disciples first at Antioch, Christians first at Antioch. And it talks about the churches there, all having peace with one another and growing and strengthening in number. Those things just may have never took place if it wasn't for Barnabas stepping up. Just think of the impact we can have as Barnabas did if we do those things for just one person. The goal in here never is to just, if we've all struggled with being an encourager, for too scared to build each other up to talk to people. This is not a class to say, okay, you're required now to go talk to 100 people tomorrow. Okay, you got to start somewhere. Start with somebody in your family. Start with somebody who's a friend. Start with somebody at work, or wherever. It doesn't have to be all of a sudden all at once. It's something that becomes part of you. I'm sure Barnabas, as he was growing up, I doubt he did that he just did that automatically from age 5 on. It was something I'm sure he made it a point to get used to, and made it a point to make that a part of his everyday life as a Christian. Because if you notice, there's so many other great characteristics of all these other Christians in the New Testament, from Timothy to Paul, to all these to Peter, but rarely do you hear them mentioned so much as Barnabas was in regards to building others up. You hear teaching, you hear a great example to each other, but the word edification and word encouraging is not associated with those guys as much as you hear from Barnabas. Not that they weren't. It was just that is just something that Barnabas made it a point to make it part of his characteristic. And that is the goal of this lesson, to get us down that road, on that way for that to be us. Before we move on in the text, I just want to finish up there. Do y'all have any more comments on the passage there with Mark in Acts 15, 36 and 37?
I talked to Dad when I got home. I just happened to think I was going to mention it before the end of the class. But not only Barnabas and encouragers, but they were going around the congregations that had been established to encourage them. And I get thinking, like when Dad went to China and that, when they leave those people, they don't come back and see. They can't even have congregations over there. So they don't have any encouragement. You think about that for whoever comes back. Some places they go to, they have churches and they can be encouraged. So you can see why it's such a big deal to go back and encourage people, because then they start getting weak. There's somebody there, and they were all new Christians too. So the encouraging is a really, really big thing that we have to keep doing. But like I say, some don't get that, hardly at all. Once they're baptized and then they're left, like over in those places. So.
Very good. I talked last time, I said there was a reason that Corinth has so many chapters dedicated to it in a letter versus the other chapters. It's not just because they were so bad that Paul felt like he had to just bash them for so many chapters. Paul saw a good point in really focusing on Corinth, because Corinth had a geographical problem too, as people do in China or whatever. They had, Michael is about the best one I've ever heard of breaking down Corinth. He did a couple years ago, and he can't remember exactly the actual class he was in, but it was a class that he had to go through parts of the Corinth, and it must have been one of Paul's missionary journey classes or something. But it was somehow how Corinth was kind of not quite Vegas, but it's very much a hub for it's kind of a big city where just so many different foreigners came in, and where ships came in, and just a really big city, so a lot of influence. So, I don't think that Paul for 1 second didn't think of that and be like, these guys really need me. And this is probably one of the reasons they're having so many issues with this. Mickey, you can help me out, but that's a great point. How are we supposed to help people like that, Christians in other countries, Christians that have governments that say you're going to jail if you worship? How do we help support preachers there? We try and do that through emails, as preachers, prayer. Those are some hard situations. Not like we can just go pack up once a weekend and go fly to these countries and help out. But those brethren, whatever we can do, it is something that we're supposed to do. And like I said, one of those things is a wonderful thing. We have the technology of email. Sometimes Facebook. I know we got some of those brothers that tune in on Facebook sometimes, or different things, or look at our website for lessons or whatever from different countries. So all those are wonderful tools, but that Paul and them didn't have back then, of course. But they didn't go attack and stay with the churches that. Of course, Paul saw fit to keep encouraging those who are doing well and made it points. But if you notice, every church he talked to, even if they had a good report, they still had things to work on. They still had things that they had. That's part of edification. Edification is not just making you feel all warm and gooey inside. It's about helping you get better. We're not just supposed to say to each other, "You're the best Christian you can be." That's just, it makes you feel good, but that's not what we're supposed to do here. Barnabas, every encouraging word he said had a teaching in it. It had something in there that was encouraging them not that just you're doing great, also encouraging you to be better. So that's part of the encouragement that we're supposed to have a part of us here. Let's see. Okay, so any more about Acts 15 before we move on to the Proverbs text here?
Just one comment. I wasn't part of the class on Sunday, so never been brought up. But I really, this lesson, I really like how the main lessons run together. Point being, Barnabas is demonstrating what Paul talked about there in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 about those comely parts, those that need more honor, need more attention. That's what he's doing with Mark here, seemingly. And like, if you do it right, and if I understand this right, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 11, this is the same Mark, right? And Luke, and Paul's saying, only Luke was with me. Take Mark and bring him with me, for he's profitable for the ministry now. So if we give attention to, if we're encouraging the right way, a new convert or somebody that's really screwed up or whatever, somebody that needs it. We all need it, but some need it more than others. These comely parts. Good things can come from that. Do it the right way. I mean, eventually maybe they'll become an encouragement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else? You know, it is funny, Mickey mentioned Mark again. This is completely the side point. It's not a point of our discussion, but when I actually was Googling and looking up different things on that, I typed in every way you could of who else could this be besides this Mark, and most everything said, come back and say this Mark. It's definitely the cousin or nephew. So there was one or two things that were a little out there with a different theory, but most of the things pointed to and some good backup on it too, on why they thought that, based on geography and location and years of time and things like that. So it made sense to me. So take that for what it's worth. As Mickey pointed out last time, we technically are not. It's not 100% guarantee that is the same Mark mentioned that was mentioned in Colossians, but based on what I read, that most agree that it fits if they are related. Okay, so moving on, y'all can go in and turn to Proverbs, please. We're first going to look at Proverbs 15. Okay. We talked about last time, we can build up by example, but a lot of the building up we're going to do is with words. And we need to really be careful and realize that any word we speak comes with great power sometimes, whether it's good or bad. As easy as it is to build somebody up, it's just as easy, if not easier, to tear somebody down. The slightest thing said can have, unfortunately, sometimes an eternal impact. So let's read some of these Proverbs and take note of the power of words in relation to this lesson. Start in Proverbs 15:23. Whoever's got that can read it, please.
A man has joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season. How good it is.
Okay, what's that mean, Mickey? A word spoken in due season.
Another, I guess it was NIV, said a word spoken timely.
Okay.
How good it is.
Okay.
You know, being able to say the right thing when the circumstance requires or needs the right thing said is difficult to do. It's hard to know what to say, when to say it. But if you figure it out, it does a lot of good.
This is a tough question. It's a question I wrote down, though, that this is not a question that I have the answer to. So this is not a rhetorical question or anything. This is a question I'm really just curious about. When is the right time? Because, I've heard people say, if you move in too quick on this person, you may never get them back. You need to pace yourself with it. Well, then if we don't move in fast enough and help somebody, they may be lost forever, never want to come back. So when is the right time? This says in due season. This is in due time. How do we know when that time is? What is the best time for edification? What is the best time for building up? I'm sure that's on a case-by-case basis, but how are we supposed to look for that? What are we supposed to look for?
You gotta know the person.
And that's the first thing I wrote down, Tim. That we're never going. That's never going to be a perfect answer. I was hoping y'all had a perfect answer, but I put there is no perfect answer here. It's literally on a case by case basis, based on your relationship with the person. And that's why God says you're getting to know the church. You're not getting to know a clique or friends or anything like that. How am I going to know this person, how they operate? Can they take a little criticism? Can they take a little higher pitched voice? Do they need time to set and process a little bit before comes in? How are you going to know those things if I've never talked to them at all, or if I've never talked to them much outside this church building, or had them over for a meal or whatever? You see how these lessons connect when we talk about the relationship we have with one another in this church. Our edification is not going to mean much if the person for the first time says, "Who are you?" I don't even know who you are. When you're over trying to build them up, and they don't even have you never even introduced yourself before. Very good, Tim. That was kind of my thought. So in due season, to know the due season, we've got to know each other. Okay, Proverbs 16. In my book, I actually had it wrong. It's y'all's had it right. Proverbs 16:24.
Before we go on, 15:23, you
Yeah.
think it's something that's ongoing? Like, ESV says to make an apt answer is joy to a man. Is that the man speaking the answer or the man receiving the answer? I don't know if that's for anybody in here. To me, I guess that reads, if this is something you practice ongoing, you make it apt means suitable, is this something you continue to get better at, the more experience you have with people or situations, you become better at making a suitable answer to any situation.
What did yours say again?
Apt. So it says to make an apt answer is a joy to a man, and a word in season, how good it is.
What's your translation, Brad?
ESV.
ESV. Okay.
And I think a person finds joy in giving an apt reply.
Giving an apt reply.
And how good it is, and how good is a timely word.
So it's for us, right?
Yes.
Okay. To me, that just seems like it's an ongoing thing.
Yes, I agree. I think that, yes. Yes, I think that's right, yes.
You can give any kind of answer you want. The suitable one, it takes practice, it takes reps.
Very good.
Something that you might kind of pencil in on this is also from Proverbs chapter 25, verse 12, which kind of indicates that both parties can benefit from this, where it says, like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Obviously, you can speak encouraging words, but if they're not wanting to be obedient, it's not going to be pleasant to them. So it takes both. Both parties have to have a desire to serve God. So a word fitly spoken on an ear that's wanting to do what's right is going to be a benefit for both of them.
Very good.
Sorry, didn't mean to go off.
No, keep going. Okay, Proverbs 16, verse 24. It should be a page over in your Bibles there. Whoever's got that, going ahead. I love this one.
Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the bones.
You ever had honeycomb, Tim?
Yes, sir.
I've not had that much in my life, but I've had it a few times. It's really good. I mean, really good. I mean, if you like sweet, it's very sweet. I think I had it once at the state fair. They have fresh honeycombs there. I've had another time. It seemed like we did a field trip when I was in school. We had it on a field trip when I did in school one time, and really, really good. Tim, what are they saying here? With pleasant words are honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones.
It's a good thing. I mean, it's something that's positive, something that's gets good results, I guess. I don't know how to do that sweets could be, you know what I'm saying? But spiritually speaking, it's something that they like, something that, I don't know how to word it really.
I mean, this is just a comparison once again to how, and we'll look at some things in a second to the opposite direction, how important pleasant words are, as in words of, whether it be words of encouragement, words of help to someone. I love it says healing to the bones. They can be healing words, as in spiritual healing. I don't know if we realize sometimes that, you know, that if we continue to go back to Barnabas here and think of all the things that occurred because of some of the acts that he did, how much healing that man did and how much building that man did by just some words. I mean, we once again, I keep going back to the impact of Paul, but all he basically said was let him in. You know, that's all he said about Paul. Just let him be part of the group. He didn't say much. You know, it doesn't take us a lot. It doesn't take much of word. I mean, we don't have to go give a big speech to somebody and be an edifier to them or help. It just takes sometimes a few words. And God tells us they can be healing to the bones. Love that verse.
That is, when you receive gracious words, it lifts you up spiritually, but your mental health is improved too.
Absolutely.
Improves
Absolutely.
your physical.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why it's saying healing to the bones.
Absolutely.
Honey, especially for medicinal purposes.
Yeah, that can be part of it too. Very good. Anything else? Okay, let's go to Roger's verse. He just read a second ago. We're going to read verse 11 and 12 again. Roger, if you got that. You got that for me?
Yes. Like apples of gold in settings of silver is the word spoken in the right circumstances. Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear.
You're going to explain that one to me, Roger. What's apples of gold?
Well, it's kind of a non-realistic phrase. Obviously, apples aren't made of gold, but tasty, ripe, luscious apples. It's used to illustrate that a word spoken in the right circumstance. That's like a delicious apple. Or, I mean, you know, in settings of silver, gold, apples of gold in settings of silver, it's just talking about the words escaping my mind. It's just describing the beauty of that. You know, it's kind of a spiritual richness and wealth that is used to compare, to illustrate how beneficial and how much wealth there is in the word spoken in the right circumstance. And we were talking a minute ago about how do you know when. You know, this is obviously something that involves the providence of God. When we, you know, God knowing our hearts, when He knows that we have a genuine desire to be of help to someone, we don't know when to go, we don't know what to say, so to speak, you know. But when we take our desire to God and we prepare as much as we can, wanting to be encouraging, I think God will, Scripture indicates that God does His providential thing in creating that occasion that when we decide to go, it will meet with His blessing and be productive.
Very good. Using that word aptly again, Brad. I think that's a very important part here. Whether it's reoccurring, whether that's how quick you're willing to respond. I think it all goes back to, once again, it needs to, if it's part of you, the aptly just becomes a thing that's just part of your nature. It's just something you're going to do, not something, do I need to do it for this person? Do I know this person enough? There's no really hesitation. As you never saw with Barnabas, it didn't matter who the person was, there was never a hesitation. Because it was part of his character. It wasn't based on the subject, it was based on Barnabas. Barnabas said, I'm going to encourage. I don't really care who I'm sending the encouragement out to. Boy, do I need to work on that attitude. Whether it's indirectly or not, have you ever found yourself sometimes being picky and choosy about that? You may not be mean to be like that. It just sometimes happens, and it could be based on it's just not something you're as comfortable as you need to be at. The word aptly there, I think that is that sounds to me more like a requirement, not as much as you just saying it'd be good if you were apt about it. It's something that I think God is expects of us. Let's go. I call this one the Brian McDonald verse. Now let's go over to Proverbs 27:17. I can't think of this verse without thinking of Brian. Now I just can't with the just can't. Somebody read Proverbs 27:17 for me.
Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another.
All right, so we've gone from honeycomb and apples of gold and setting of silver to now iron, which doesn't sound as pleasant. We're talking about a little something different there, aren't we? It's iron sharpens iron. What can our encouragement and what can our words do for one another?
Uplift, strengthen, encourage, everything. I mean, it just depends on the situation, but it can be helpful in some way.
To motivate them to do other things.
So every word we speak to one another, everything we do can either have the opposite effect and tear somebody down, or we can sharpen one another. Whether that's sharpen more in each other's tool belts, as men of this church, getting better with things we do for this church, things we do for to help those around us. Whether it's anybody in this church, how we use our talents, how we refine those talents. That's not something we can do on our own. We need each other to help sharpen each other, to make each other wiser as Christians, to make each other bolder for God. When Kyle and Sean Bain and whatever preachers ever stood up here, when they get up and say the words of, if you have any issues with what I'm saying, you be my friend if you came and told me. Well, what are they asking for? They're asking for iron sharpening iron, because if you don't come tell me, you're not doing what I've asked you to do. You're not making me sharper. You're not making me a better Christian. You're just letting me keep speaking what I shouldn't be speaking. Those words, the good words, can be so important. Let's get to real quickly some of the things. And the book has some, but I'll quickly go through those. I want to hear some things we can encourage, and we'll get to some things we can do to discourage others. But so let's start with some things we can do to encourage others. I'm going to really quickly read through the ones on. I think we had some crossover on mine and y'all's, but some things we can do to help encourage, whether by words, on pen, paper, by example, or we can send other disciples a card, thank you note, small gift. I know these are all things that I believe this church does all of these. But pick up telephone, call someone to say thanks, express your appreciation for something. Now this is more of an example here. You know how you can have a positive attitude in everything you do. To me, when I see somebody who I know had some bad things happen in their life, I've seen it. And then they're still acting the same way the next day that they did the prior day when something was going good. That's the person I want to be around. It's not the person that just rides the wave of, hey, things are going good, so I'm at a high, and things are going bad, so I'm down here. Just having that warm, positive atmosphere, no matter that is an encouragement to others. Mine as be supportive and uplifting, especially when you know that others are hurting. So that's the ones you guys had too. But then it asks for other ways to encourage Others, what are some thoughts y'all had? What are other things we can do to encourage other people?
Visitation.
Okay, very good.
It's very athletic.
Okay, I agree. Very good.
I think one thing we can do is to brag on the young people. I mean, encourage, not exactly
Absolutely.
brag, give a big head, I don't mean that, but if we tell them, you're doing really good, that's a great job, just encourage them, give them motivation, and let them think that, hey, yeah, somebody noticed I did a good job.
Yeah, I think I told y'all that I had that in class. When I first threw out the idea of having the invitations in my class, it was when I was teaching these middle schoolers last time. I point blank told them that I only wanted a 1 to 2 minute talk, and every single one of them cornered me like as a mob after church and said, "How long does this got to be? Is it got to be 5 minutes, 7 minutes?" They're sweating. Everybody, every one of them. They were all standing out there before they went outside to play, ready to ask me that question. I said, "Did y'all not listen?" I said, 1 to 2 minutes. First person went. Everybody in the class clapped after the first person went. They thought it was that good. And then everybody, the next couple of kids, they still dreaded a little bit. Just not the words they wrote, but just getting up in front of everybody. Then it just got easier. And then I asked who wants to go first, and they were going, the next couple. So it just got easier for them. Just those words, like Don was saying, just can mean so much. And I even told a couple of the dads around here. I think I told them. I think they're ready to give invitations. That's my opinion. That may not be opinion of yourself or whatever, but I thought they're ready to give invitations. Those words can have a major impact on the young. It's something we should not be shy to say when they do these things. From the smallest of things, from scripture reading or praying for the Lord's Supper, as Sam had the kids do the other day, they can mean just the smallest word can mean so much. Okay, how about some more? Anybody got any more ways we can encourage others?
To add on to Carol's visitation, I put out listen, smile, listen.
Very good. I had just be present. What I mean by that is you can't just be present if you're not getting to know everybody in this church. And when I say present, that doesn't mean you have to speak. I've caught myself, and Morgan will even tell you at times, sometimes I'm ready to give a solution before I hear the whole story with something. Maybe that's a guy thing, but it's probably just a me thing. But it's a small thing. Small, yeah. And so
I'm not a smaller. It's just my marriage. That's my marriage.
That's discouraging words, Mom. No. So, just sometimes being there to hear somebody who's is going through something, or that's just needing somebody to listen, that's uplifting to them. That means they know you're there just to hear them when they need to say something, or when they, I guess, what do the elders say every Tuesday night if somebody wants to come speak? How many do y'all always have a solution? Maybe y'all do. But based on what Dad told me, they don't always have a solution when he used to do this. Sometimes they're just there to hear, and that's comforting to the members. They know they can speak anything they need to the elders. Sometimes we just need to be there to listen. That's uplifting to those around us. Any more?
Take action without being prompted.
Very good. Very good. Intentional. Very much intentional. Very good.
Just send a text out of the blue, but sometimes you get a text from somebody just out of the blue. Really, it's an encouraging thing. Lifts you up.
Absolutely.
Sam's bad for that. In a good way.
I say, I think that was an indirect compliment, Sam.
That's the way you do it.
Very good.
I don't get any from
Any more? Okay, those are all great things. I do want to get into, we've been talking about all the good things of Barnabas, all the good things, all the soothing words we can say, all the things we can do to help others. Let's look at some things that aren't exactly what I would call healing words or tear down things we can do. I don't know if you, the way he wrote this book, I almost wish you included it, but I don't even know if you caught it, but on the left side of the page over here, he put things you can say that would be discouraging or bad things that would cause somebody to be torn down, or discouraging words. Do y'all have anything written there for discouraging things we can do
Well, that's a Philippians 4:8 thing. We're supposed to be thinking about those.
I would say that Paul's actions towards John Mark was rather discouraging to him. I mean, he didn't
That's a good one.
go with him.
Very good. Very good. Whether or not, that Paul or Barnabas was in the right there, we do know one thing, that Mark thought somebody was on his side and somebody wasn't. So if we just think of the perspective of Mark, that's a very good point. That was what Mark thought. Very good.
But then Paul took Cyrus, so Cyrus got to go.
Very good.
The obvious one's wrong, gossiping about somebody, complaining. You don't think so much, somebody that's attendance is really poor, when they're not here, it's discouraging. I mean, when they know to be here, should be here, they never show, they don't come, it's discouraging. Divisive person, very discouraging.
Very good.
And bad attitude, somebody with bad attitude is very discouraging. Not as positive as it should be.
Very good. Some other ones that I had too for that is saying derogatory, hurtful things without thinking. Sometimes, when it's real heated, some really ugly things can fly out. We had sing that song all the time, Angry Words or Let Them Never. And the reason they say angry before words is because anger, if we're not careful, can really lead to some really bad words. Simply ignoring Christians in the fellowship. We talked about that last time. This is not, we're not part of a church that has groups or people, and there's certain people we're supposed to be around, certain people we're not supposed to be around. We're supposed to be a family here. Mickey mentioned it, late to worship service, and always the first to exit, sometimes even before, it seems like the prayer's over. That's not very encouraging. Always assuming the worst in each other's and treating them based on that. We make assumptions of people sometimes and then ignore them sometimes based on those assumptions. Just setting a bad example. This can be sometimes on the we got to be real careful with this with the younger people. But throwing cold water on new ideas. I thought that was a good one that I had in my book. Sometimes young people want to say something. Far be it from us to discourage them from speaking up. The young Christians, if they have an idea, it may not be an idea that you implement or whatever, but just to knock it down because of their age or how young they are in the faith, that can be very discouraging to a young person who may never want to speak again. I believe Derek said something one time in a meeting years ago, didn't he?
He had become a Christian.
Yeah.
He was 11 years old, and they had an elders meeting. I'm not an elders meeting, but group. So they went in there, and he wasn't sitting there, Dad. And they said, did anybody have anything to bring up, something they could do? And Derek said, yeah, I think we ought to build a sidewalk all over the church building. And the elders, well, that's a very good idea. Derek says his arm wasn't long enough to reach there. But, but they handled it good, They just said, well, we'll think about it. But, he was trying, the young people, like you say, they're trying to think of things they think or things that would help or to do. And you have to, to handle it the right way so they don't get discouraged or, something like that. But you'll have those things sometimes.
I think learning to appreciate the uniqueness of each person in the body here is quite interesting. No one is alike, and everyone's got something to contribute. And I think we need to value that as Christians.
Absolutely.
Because I was thinking the other day, I could write a book on the diversity of people at Southside. I mean,
Now I
it is.
know why she wants someone different to take her on.
But I think it's so cool. It is so cool. Everybody is unique and they offer something to the body. And it's God's design. And that's what, one of the things when we started this, it says, this is God's design, the human body. Then Paul, uses the example for the church. And I thought, wow, this is God's design. And that's the bell.
I think it's the first bell, hopefully, isn't it?
Well, just kind of accountability thing for ourselves, conducting yourselves outside of these walls as someone not aligned with Christ's concepts and attitudes and attributes. You acting that self and then also seeing it from someone else outside of here, out in the public or whatever, that can take the wind out of yourselves, or you can take the wind out of somebody else's self by your conduct.
Yeah, I can't remember when Mickey said it before, but I remember it was in a lesson or if it was in a class before, but I don't think it was actually a lesson on it or a lesson on encouragement, but it's still related. If he was out one day and he was over at Wasabi, I'm using Wasabi example, you'll see why, if he looks over and he sees a couple of Christians rolling into Wildcat Liquor. We don't know exactly why they're Wildcat Liquor, but there's not a lot to buy, I'm assuming, in Wildcat Liquor except liquor. So how is that, other than the alarms going off in Mickey's head, how's that going to make him feel, especially if it's somebody he's known 30, 40 years as a Christian, and he's going to feel, I'm sure, discouraged and heartbroken and just very tough situation there, and it's complete opposite of the edification that we're trying to do. It's a good example of just a simple action causing discouragement for a fellow brother. So as we're out and about, we got to be careful how we act. Can't act one way here and then act somewhere, act a different way elsewhere. That can be such a discouraging thing, and it can lead to not just a discouraging thing for you, it can lead to a discouraging thing for people outside this church. Why would people want to come to this church if they see you acting and talking about this church in a good light, and then see your actions completely different from what you talk about all the time? It's just not something somebody wants to come to. One thing I wanted to get to real quick, this writer, I'm going to tell you, he does not think any churches, and that includes any good churches today, spend enough time together. I can't say that I disagree with him. He refers to back in Acts 2, where everybody was meeting together, not only in congregation, but they were meeting together in each other's homes all the time. I think this church does a great job with that, with different get-togethers. But that's not something that's for one person to organize. That's not something for just one person to do once in a blue moon. That's something that it's on each of us to get to know people and to make this church part of our lives. I don't think he's in any way saying that everybody every night of the week needs to take a turn having 150 members over their house. That's not what it means at all. It's making an apt point to become the brother and sister. We call ourselves brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters know each other. They care for each other. We can't know or care for each other and encourage one another if we're not around each other more. Something I need to do better at. Something I'm sure we all can do better at. But that was the last point he made, was daily contact. And notice the key word daily, not Sunday and Wednesday contact. It's daily contact with each other. We had some more verses really quickly until the bell rings. Just a few other verses that talk about encouraging. We don't do Acts 15:31. We've already looked at that. Let's see, what was the one I did want to look at? 1 Thessalonians 2:10 through 12. as one of the ones I want to leave with. 1 Thessalonians 2:10 through 12 is a great one in one of Paul's letters. Somebody can get to that real quick for exit. Somebody read that one for me. Great comparison from how we're supposed to act as edifiers as a father would to his own children here.
Your witnesses, and God also, how devoutly and justly and blamelessly we behaved ourselves among you who believe, as you know how we exhorted and comforted and charged every one of you as a father does his own children, that you would walk worthy of God who calls you into his own kingdom and glory.
Very good. We will leave with that verse. I appreciate all y'all's attendance tonight. Everybody, great comments. We are going to start on lesson 5. So please go and complete the questions on that and do that lesson on greeting one another. Appreciate it. Thank you.